Donald Trump's presidential campaign has faced a number of challenges from musical artists that object to the use of their music in connection with his political campaign. We've previously covered the copyright infringement case related to the Trump campaign's use of Isaac Hayes' song, Hold On, I'm Coming. I'm Scott Hervey from Weintraub Tobin, and I'm joined today by Jamie Linsenberg. We're going to talk about the court's order in Eddie Grant's lawsuit regarding the Trump campaign's use of Electric Avenue on today's episode of The Briefing. Jamie, welcome back to The Briefing.
Thanks for having me back, Scott. I'm excited to dive into this interesting case.
It is interesting. Let's start with the basics. Can you give us a quick overview of what this case is about?
Certainly. This case involves a copyright infringement claim by musician Eddie Grant against the former president Donald Trump and his campaign. The dispute centers around the use of Grant's song Electric Avenue, I think we all know that one, in the campaign's 55-second video posted on Trump's Twitter account during the 2020 presidential election. The video contains an animation of a high-speed red train bearing the words Trump Pence, Keep America Great 2020, in stark contrast to a slow-moving handcar bearing the words Biden President, your hair smells terrific. The handcar is powered by an animated likeness of President Biden.
In August 2020, Grant's lawyer sent the Trump campaign a cease and desist letter. Neither the video nor the tweet were removed, and on September 2020, Grant filed suit. The Trump campaign contended that the use of the song constituted fair use. Now, this recent ruling comes as a result of both parties filing motions for summary judgment.
There were two key issues here. First, whether the plaintiffs had a valid copyright registration for the sound recording of Electric Avenue. And second, whether the use of the song in the campaign video constituted fair use under copyright law.
So the first issue was a real interesting one. That's whether or not Eddie Grant had a valid copyright registration in the sound recording of Electric Avenue. So as you know, a plaintiff is not allowed or able to file a lawsuit for copyright infringement unless the allegedly infringed work has been registered. Without a valid copyright registration, a plaintiff cannot bring a viable copyright infringement action. So the question was whether the registration of the album Eddie Grant, The Greatest Hits in 2002, which included Electric Avenue amongst the other Eddie Grant hits, also affected registration of that specific sound recording for Electric Avenue.
That's right. And the court ruled in favor of the plaintiffs on this issue. It found that the registration of the compilation album Eddie Grant, The Greatest Hits in 2002 effectively registered the sound recording of Electric Avenue contained within it. The district court noted that courts in the Second Circuit have held that the registration of a collective or a derivative work covers registration of the constituent parts if the registrant has copyright ownership of those constituent parts as well.
Now let's talk about the fair use question, which seems to be the core of the case. So the court analyzed the four statutory factors of fair use: the purpose and character of the use, the nature of the copyrighted work, the amount and substantiality of the portion used, and the effect on the potential market. Ultimately, the court found that none of these factors favored the defendant.
Let's talk about the first fair use factor, which asks us whether the new work merely supersedes the objects of the original creation, supplanting the original, which would not support fair use, or does the use instead add something new with a further purpose or different character, thereby making that use justified because the copying is reasonably necessary in order to achieve this new purpose. A use that has a further purpose or different character is then said to be transformative. The Trump campaign argued that its use of the song was transformative. The court was, however, not so receptive to this claim.
No, that's right. The court was not receptive to that argument. The court found that the video has a very low degree of transformativeness, at least as it relates to the song. The court said that the video is best described as a wholesale copying of music to accompany a political campaign ad. The court noted that the song plays for more than two-thirds of the animation and that the song itself plays no discernible role in communicating the video's overarching political commentary.
In assessing the first fair use factor, the court must also consider whether the allegedly infringing use is of a commercial nature. The question of whether the work is commercial is not whether the sole motive of the use is monetary gain, but whether the user stands to profit from exploitation of the copyrighted material without paying the customary price for it.
And in this case, the court found that the Trump campaign benefited commercially from using Electric Avenue without paying a license fee. The court noted that there is a well-established market for music licensing, and the Trump campaign sought to gain an advantage by using Grant's very popular song without paying Grant the customary licensing fee.
That's right. And the second factor favored the plaintiffs because Electric Avenue is a creative work. And looking at the third factor, that also went against the defendants because they used a substantial portion of the song. The fourth and final fair use factor asks whether, if the challenged use becomes widespread, it will then adversely affect the potential market for the copyrighted work. Analysis of this factor requires the court to balance the benefit the public will derive if the use is permitted and the personal gain that the copyright owner will receive if the use is denied.
The court found that this factor favored Eddie Grant because widespread, uncompensated use could harm the potential market for licensing the song, and there would not be any public benefit that is lost from not allowing the use of the song in the Trump campaign video, since the campaign, at least the court said, the campaign could have used any song, created a new song, or used no song at all to convey the same political message in the video. Denying the Trump campaign's fair use defense in this case, the court said, will not chill legitimate public satire.
I think that the court got it right here, Scott. What do you think are the broader implications, though, of this ruling for political campaigns and their use of music?
I think this ruling sends a clear message that a political campaign's use of a song or other content in a political ad or otherwise as part of political speech does not, without more, automatically transform that original work. At least the court seemed to say that there needed to be more than just the use of a song as background for a political ad or a political work, a work of political satire. The court seemed to say that in order for the use to be transformative, the work that was used, in this case, the song, needed to somehow help convey the political message or the political satire that was being conveyed by the video or ad itself.
Right. Yeah, I agree on that reading of what the court decided here and an analysis of their opinion. And I also think it's interesting, we didn't really get into it here in this discussion or what the court discussed as far as, following the different factors. But I think this becomes an issue also with artists, then being specifically associated with a certain campaign. And if they don't have any rights of approval, that would come with, licensing the song. If there was a licensing agreement, they could choose not to license their song to a specific campaign. I think, that's come up in the past, and it's Also an important piece that's not really addressed here, but it's the association of a piece of music with a political campaign, and I think that's, you know, important as well.
Yeah, that was an issue. Actually, you weren't. I was talking to Tara about the Isaac Hayes case, and we mentioned it at the top of the reading here. But that was an issue that was raised by the court in granting the Isaac Hayes entity a temporary restraining order against the Trump campaign for the use of "Hold On, I'm Coming" um, in connection with political events. Apparently, the Trump campaign was using "Hold On, I'm Coming" in political campaign events, and BMI grants a blanket license for all of the songs within its library, but it's allowed to pull a particular song if an artist or a publisher objects. And Isaac Hayes had or his the entity controlling his rights had objected and then filed suit because the Trump campaign continued to use the song. And in granting the Isaac Hayes entity the temporary restraining order, or sorry, preliminary injunction, the court noted that as potential harm, that the continued association with the campaign is a measure of potential harm. It's definitely something that the courts do take into account. Well, thanks for joining me today, Jamie. As always, appreciate having the opportunity to banter with you and talk about cases like this.
Thanks for having me, Scott. Always good to be here.
Well, that's all for today's episode of The Briefing. Thanks to Jamie for joining me today, and thank you, the listener or the viewer, for tuning in. We hope you found this episode informative and enjoyable. And if you did, please remember to subscribe, leave us a review, and share this episode with your friends and colleagues. And if you have any questions about the topics we covered today, please leave us a comment.